Hello and welcome everyone to the second class of the Azon Masterclass series. Today we are going to be advancing with our Amazon product research and niche research to try to do some keyword and search engine research at this phase. Now the whole point of the work that we will be doing in today's class is to not necessarily give yourself a guarantee, but to give yourself some kind of an indication that the keywords and the products and the niche that you're going to be targeting with your website, that these things will be able to deliver some traffic to you. Now, ultimately, to get traffic to one of these websites and to do it completely hands-free and without having to spend any kind of money in terms of like advertising, your biggest focus is going to be on the content of your website because you're going to be getting this traffic through search engines, and most of that is going to come through Google. So with that said, if you target the wrong keywords at this phase of the site building process, then everything that you do after this in terms of building the website based on this research can end up going wrong. You don't want to have to put forth the work to build one of these websites, to write this content, unless you have a pretty good idea that you can get some search engine rankings. Now, ultimately, you're not going to be able to get a great search engine ranking with every single page and every single keyword that you are targeting on your site. The objective, though, is just to get a decent ranking on even a couple of those pages. If you can have a couple of pages that have top 10 rankings on some really great keywords, that's actually all a site will need to be able to be successful. So part of this research involves picking the keywords that you believe are going to offer traffic without a ton of competition. And some of these keywords are simply going to be because they make sense for your website and for no other reason. So on pages like those, you don't have to worry about the search engine traffic. You don't have to worry about what the competition is. If a page makes sense for your website, for what your niche is about, for what your products are about, then include it. Don't worry about what might happen with the search engines with that page. But at least some of the pages on your site need to be based around the keyword research that we will be doing in today's class. So ultimately, our goal here is to take one of these Amazon niches that we have found with the research in the previous class, and we want to verify that we do have some good keyword possibilities that we can go after for this niche. And once we can verify that, we need to then begin to plan out the entire website. And planning out the website is done based on this research again. We will be taking the keywords that we find through this research and using that to figure out what the different topics of each page of the site will be. Now, we're not going to do all of the website planning in today's class, but we're kind of going to lay the groundwork for this today and at least begin to assemble some of the topics that we will want to be using on our final website. So with that said, I want to go ahead and dive into today's training. I'm going to be starting out on Google with their keyword research tool, which is called the Keyword Planner. Now, this tool is only available through Google AdWords. You do have to create a Google AdWords account. However, you do not have to actually be running advertising under Google AdWords to be able to use this keyword planner. Now, with that said, in recent years, there have been a lot of changes with this keyword planner. And in fact, Google is always updating their services. If you're watching these videos, even a year after they're created, chances are Google's going to look different. They're actually in the middle of a redesign right now for the keyword planner, where instead of this entry page, you actually have this entry page. And if you land on this entry page and you want to get to the old one, there's a link all the way down here at the bottom. I'm going to do a brief demonstration of both of these today and show you how I utilize this with all of the research that I'm going to be doing to plan and then build this website. Now, ultimately, this keyword research tool, if you are not running any kind of advertising on Google AdWords, it's not going to give you very specific data. It's going to give you a range of search amounts. Just so I can show you what I am talking about here, I'm just going to do a very quick keyword search. Here are the ranges that I am speaking about. Instead of telling you the exact number of monthly searches for each of the keyword phrases, they give you a range instead. Now, ultimately, these ranges are not super helpful. Some of them are such a wide range that it's really kind of hard to know where these things are going to be placed inside of that range. When you're dealing with the really large search terms, the ones that have tens of thousands or more of average monthly searches, they're pretty safe to ignore. They're always going to have too much competition for a website like what I am teaching you to build for that to actually be able to rank. So you want to focus on stuff that's below 10,000. And in most cases, you actually want to focus on keywords that are even below 1,000. So that would be the ones that are showing up as 100 to 1,000. Here we go, one of these keywords. The vast majority of the keywords that you will want to target will end up being within this particular range here. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can go about getting some more specific keyword data out of this. One of them is to simply run some ads. You don't have to spend a ton of money. If you can just find a selection of keywords and bid a couple of pennies on that particular keyword and just let those ads run for a month or two, you can usually come in here and they will show you the specific numbers again instead of giving you these ranges. However, there are some other ways that you can still get some data out of this besides these ranges and without running any kind of advertising on Google AdWords. And that's actually to kind of pretend like you might be thinking about setting up a campaign. And you would do that by collecting keywords onto a plan, which then you would set up an advertising campaign for. So if I were to want to find out a little more about this keyword phrase here, just to find out where in this range this might be showing up. I can add this keyword to a plan over here, and it can already tell me, just based on this bid range here, how many clicks I might be able to expect off of this keyword. Now, if I raise this even higher, chances are, if I'm willing to bid a pretty high amount on this keyword, I'm probably going to be one of the top ranked ads for this particular keyword phrase. So getting 185 clicks, an ad is definitely not going to get clicked on every single time it is seen. So chances are that keyword phrase is going to be more in the high end of the 100 to the 1000 range. Now you can also click on Review Plan here and see a little bit more information. It will actually show you an estimate on the number of impressions and, again, the number of clicks that you might get. Now this can all be based on the settings that you have, the amount that you're willing to bid on a click. It can kind of alter this data. You're not getting specific information out of this, really. It's telling you, by going to a really high cost per click, that I might actually see 3,000 impressions. That's obviously a lot higher than the range of 100 to 1,000 that it was referring to. But this is likely because of different types of keyword matching that Google might be using. This might be talking about any keyword phrase that simply contains this keyword in it, whereas the previous page, I believe, is more in reference to that exact keyword. So that could be one reason why you will see some differences in terms of the impressions that are available and the actual range amounts that Google is giving you on the previous page. So with that said, I believe that is, at least for people that have used the keyword planner in the past, and even for new people using it, these ranges for the average monthly searches, these things throw people off quite a bit. And so always find that this is really important to uh, discuss and show you that there are ways that you can actually, um, get around that type of thing. So now, at this point, I want to take what I was doing on the Amazon website in the previous class in terms of searching for a possible niche, different keyword phrases that I might be able to use. So I was searching for radiation detectors. There are a number of different ones that are available, and without really knowing too much about these products myself, one of the easiest things that I can do, besides researching keywords relating to the type of product that this is I can also research brand names and model names and model numbers and see if there is any kind of keyword traffic relating to that sort of thing as well. So just to get started, going with a fairly vague and general keyword phrase, radiation detector didn't even quite register. It gives me a number of other ones. Personal radiation detector is showing up in a lower range. Geiger counter is very, very high. Now, while there's a lot of searches for this kind of a search term, if you remember the previous class where I was talking about you wanting to avoid the really high competition that will typically be found with those very vague general phrases, this is what I was referring to. There's a ton of traffic, but chances are there's also going to be a ton of competition on that phrase too. Now, one thing that is also commonly confused when I reach any kind of training having to do with the keyword planner and talking about competition is the fact that they have this competition column right here. This is not the competition that I am actually talking about. So when it says that there's high competition here, this is talking about competition within the Google AdWords advertising platform. So there's a lot of competition among the paid advertisers on these keywords that say high in the competition column. This does not guarantee that the free organic search results will have high competition. It might, but you really can't tell based on the information here. Because while this one says Geiger counter is medium competition on AdWords, I pretty much guarantee that to get a real organic search ranking on that keyword phrase on Google, it would be extremely high competition. So I am looking for more specific keywords, things that are less vague, things that would allow me to target very specific topics and very specific brands or products of this particular type of product. Now, in addition to those really specific keywords for individual pages, I'm also kind of looking for a primary keyword phrase that could summarize my entire website. So to start with that one, something like one of these. Personal radiation detector, radiation detection equipment, radiation detection devices, possibly nuclear radiation detector. Any of these keyword phrases might potentially be a good choice. So I will simply make a list. So these will kind of be my primary keyword phrases, or at least possible primary keyword phrases. So I want to continue to do this same type of thing, but also to find additional topics that I could talk about. Sometimes by simply scrolling through these, I might be able to find some of these topics. I'm looking though for anything that allows me to get more specific within my main topic. So think about these primary keywords that I've selected already and picture a web. Everything extending from this one point has to be connected to these topics in some way. They have to be relational. But each thing, as I get a little further away in my web, gets a little more specific. Now, I know there are different kinds of these radiation detectors. The alpha, beta, and gamma, I believe it was, that I found in my research the last time. That could potentially be a topic. Whether or not that would actually have keyword traffic for it, it's not going to really matter because I believe that is a topic that would simply be useful based on what my website would be about. I also have all of these brands that I can go and check out. There are some really affordable, cheap ones. There are some more professional, really expensive ones, and I can look around and see what kind of interest there might be in terms of people searching for these products on Google. So, just to start with, I'll just take one of these brand names. I'm just going to search the brand name in general. I want to see how popular just this brand name is. A lot of times you can find a brand name that makes a small selection of products, and then you have other brand names that make hundreds or even thousands of different types of products. It really doesn't matter which one you're going for, but knowing what kind of a brand you're dealing with can help you to determine how you might try to target that page. So for example here, the brand name itself is showing in my 100 to 1000 range that I am interested in finding. So I definitely want to make a note of this brand. I might even make some kind of separation and do some cheaper brands and more expensive brands just for my own personal reference. Maybe I will end up wanting to uh, have separate sections on my website for the cheaper and the more expensive brands. Maybe I'll put them all together. I don't really know at this point because I'm just kind of researching at the moment. So this seems like a logical way that I might be able to have some kind of separation among these products that people might also be searching for as well, potentially. So since this particular brand here does not have a lot of traffic for the brand itself, in terms of, um, this isn't going to be a company like Sony, for example. If I just search for Sony, it's going to have an extreme number of average monthly searches. So for a brand like Sony, where we have a ton of monthly searches, our chances of ranking just on the brand name itself is going to be pretty low. So for a brand like this, we need to make sure we are targeting much more specific keywords. Sony obviously makes a lot of different kinds of products, and our website is probably only going to be targeting one of those kinds of products. So whatever type of product it is within that brand, you would want to be searching for um, that keyword instead and trying to target that more specific keyword phrase. For this first brand name that I'm working on, there's not a major need for that. I'd be willing to bet if I search for the brand name and the actual device type, I'm probably not going to see much or any traffic potentially showing up at least. Now, because I have found nothing here, it doesn't mean that this brand name isn't worth targeting. Maybe it means that the only thing they make is this radiation detector. Maybe it means that it's just some unknown cheap private label type of brand from China potentially. This is when more research comes into play, and I would want to go and find out more about this brand. If they are only making this one kind of product and they have this kind of traffic, then I'm fine with it. I will try to get a ranking on that actual brand name itself and not going after something much more specific like radiation detectors, simply because that would be the only reason why people would search for them, is if they're looking for that product, if that is all that they make. Again, I don't know any of these things yet. I have to do more research to find out for sure. But I just want to give you my entire thought process as I am going through all this research. Now here, this particular product, the brand name, it's probably not going to be that great of a brand name in terms of finding search traffic for it. The entire brand name, as shown on Google, it might not have any search traffic or very, very little traffic. If I shorten this a little bit more, I may begin to see more traffic, but then it might also start confusing it with other things. As you can see, Google kind of seems to think that SI stands for Sports Illustrated, because that's probably what most people are looking for when they search the term SI. So this particular brand name might be kind of difficult to try to determine how much demand there would be for it in the search engine rankings. I could try to search for the model and see if anything pops up for me here. I have a very tiny amount of search traffic showing up for this particular search. So for a product like this, I wouldn't expect to have a ton of demand or a ton of search traffic anyways, because it's a really expensive product. It's really mainly going to be used for professionals within this field that would actually use this product now, and not really for somebody that's preparing for some kind of a natural disaster. So it's kind of hard to say whether a ton of people would search for it. It might still be worth featuring on my site, simply because if I can bring in traffic from, say, one of these cheap brands and convince them to buy a more expensive brand instead, obviously I'd get a lot larger commission off of something like this than I would this product. So I kind of want to continue this same type of searching for different Amazon products, different brand names, different product names, different model numbers, pretty much anything that I could find relating to these things. And I want to find, what of this stuff do people actually search for? If I can find any kind of traffic for it at all, I will at least make some kind of a note of it on my list. So I have GQ. It's kind of hard to say where this might land in terms of expensive or not. It's at least under $100, so I might try to keep this with the cheaper brands for the moment. But I'm basically building up a brand list at the moment. So I can continue this process and look for maybe 10, possibly 15 different brand names that could potentially be brands that I would want to include on my site. Now, as you continue through this process, you will likely find that some of these brands, depending on the type of product you're dealing with, some of the brands will have next to no search traffic for it, and some of them will have a ton of traffic. It's okay to have a bit of a variety of the two. And again, also think beyond the search traffic and think, what is going to be better for the people visiting your website? Sure, the best thing for you would probably be to pile nothing but the most expensive products on the site, because if you were to refer a sale on those, sure, you would get the highest commission. But is everybody looking for that kind of product really going to want to buy the most expensive ones? Some people might want to. Your average person will probably want to buy something that is more affordable, though. So always consider, who's going to be visiting your site? What will they really be looking for? And you want to find a nice way to kind of blend this in with what you are able to discover through your keyword research. So just to search a few more brands here, See if I can turn up anything a little more. This one is showing a lot more search traffic, but I can also see down below that they have a number of different kinds of, looks like mostly electronic products that they release. So this would be one of those brands that may potentially be a good brand to target, but I need to find out how I can tap into traffic for this brand for this specific product or for the type of product that this is. So this is a digital LCD electromagnetic radiation detector. We have a few other words here that I can use. EMF might be a good one to try out. So far, none of these are working out. So while I found a decent amount of traffic for the actual brand name itself, so far at least, it doesn't look like there's going to be much, if any, actual traffic for this particular product, or at least not people searching for this product specifically by the brand name and for this type of product. Maybe they're searching for a model number instead. That's not actually a model number for the product. That's the Amazon identification for it. It might be one of these numbers potentially. It could even be something else entirely. But for this product, it doesn't look like it would be a great one to go after because number one, I can't find a good way to target it. Number two, it doesn't actually seem to be available for sale through Amazon as normal. It's available from third-party sellers essentially. So I think that product and potentially even that brand would be a good one to completely ignore. Whereas normally, because it had a lot more reviews on it than some of these other products, I might have gone after this product. But after doing a little bit of research, I'm not necessarily as confident anymore about pursuing that specific brand. So that's the whole idea behind this keyword research, is to find what I can target, how I can go about targeting these things. This brand looks like it might be a good one. Any of these relational terms, I see good relational words there. So chances are this brand might only be for these Geiger counters. So that would definitely be a good one to add to the list. And it's also a little more on the expensive side as too. Now I could maybe look for still a little more RD 1503. I could try to search for this along with the brand name. Looks like there's a small amount of traffic for it. I could try to search for it completely by itself. Also a small amount of traffic for it. So if I were to build a page to target this brand and this particular product, and potentially even a couple of other of the same kinds of products from this brand, I might be able to tap into a halfway decent amount of traffic from those tiny keyword phrases and then also from the main brand name phrase as well. So I believe that could be a good possibility. So once I have gone through this same type of process to collect a number of different brands and products that I believe I will want to target, and also to try to figure out how I will actually go about targeting this stuff in terms of the keywords that I will use to refer to them, um, keywords that I want to make sure end up within the page content, maybe keywords that I want to have for the title of the page. I'm getting my initial plan together for my website like this, but I'm also, again, considering what the people visiting my site are looking for. I'm also considering where there is actually traffic in terms of all of these keyword phrases. Now, I mentioned some other possibilities in terms of different niches that I could make for this same kind of a website. Instead of targeting the radiation detectors, I might decide to go for something different, something along the lines of preparing for a nuclear disaster, but only if I can actually find a good keyword phrase that I could use to target that sort of thing. Now, if I'm not really sure what to search for, sometimes I'll just go over to Google and I'll try to figure out what are some of the common page topics that perhaps people have used. Maybe I need to search survive a nuclear disaster instead. Maybe I need to be looking for things having to do with bombs or fallout. So just these things can give me some ideas. Down at the bottom of Google, I also have some other ideas: how to survive a nuclear blast, how to build a nuclear shelter, um, survival kits, things of that nature. So I'll just take one of these to start with here. We'll try this one out. Now this definitely has more traffic on it than what I was finding before. The key difference here, though, is, at least from a marketing type of a standpoint, you have a very clear-cut division in at least your paying advertisers in terms of what they're trying to target. The easiest way to try to sell something, sure, is to target a buying keyword phrase. If you can find somebody searching for buy Geiger counter, of course, you're probably going to be able to make some sales off of it. But the question would be, how many people actually search for that phrase and what kind of competition is there on it? Now, on the other end of that spectrum, you have the kinds of keyword phrases that a lot of marketers ignore. And these are your informational keyword phrases in most cases. Something like this keyword, where you still have a decent amount of traffic, but there's really not that many people that are targeting it, at least under the Google AdWords platform. Now, the question that this kind of leads us to is, how do I tell the difference between competition on Google AdWords and competition in the actual search rankings? If I search for this keyword phrase, I get a large number of results, over 6 million of these results, in fact. The question, though, is how many people are showing up under these results kind of accidentally, and how many websites are meaning to be here. One of the ways that you can figure this out is to search for how many websites will contain that exact phrase. Notice down below, Google returns results that are not just how to survive a nuclear blast. Google also knows surviving a nuclear bomb, surviving nuclear fallout, surviving a nuclear explosion, that all of these things basically mean the same thing, that they're all relational. So there are a lot of different ways to target the same subject. So the question is, how many people are actually targeting this specific subject that I am thinking about going after? Now I see that there are only 21,000 websites that contain this exact phrase in it. That's a lot less than the 6.2 million that I found before. So that means that the vast majority of those sites are really not trying to go after this specific keyword phrase. They might be going after some kind of a variation of this keyword, but not this exact one. Now I can also find out how many sites have a specific page that is something that I consider to be fairly aggressively trying to target this keyword phrase. When you find a page that has your keyword within the title of the page, so every single result here now should have how to survive a nuclear blast in it. Some of them at the beginning, some of them in the middle, but it doesn't matter. Everything in this list now, it's going to be in the title. There's only 152 of those websites. Now notice these two results here up at the top from Business Insider. They're at the top of this listing. They're also at the top of this listing, at least this website is. So Google will, if you can put good content out there, they will consider somebody with that exact phrase to be a little more relevant potentially than another site. This one, while it's still targeting the same thing, you know, these subjects might be slightly different, and so Google will at least consider that and sometimes rank them a little less. Now, the whole point here is by doing these searches, by enclosing my search in quotes, I am finding out how many pages are using this phrase. I want to see these numbers become as low as possible within your niche that you're going after. If you search a variety of keywords and compare the numbers, you can use those as a general gauge of competition in terms of if this page only has 152, like this one, and I search something similar, such as how to survive nuclear fallout, and there's only 95, then there's less websites, less pages on websites that are going after this specific phrase compared with the one that I was just searching. Now, anytime you can find in this kind of a search, what I've done here is I've added the phrase all in title and then a semicolon right in front of my quoted keyword phrase. This is going to tell me the number of pages that actually use this in the title of the page. So with this all-in title search, I preferably want to see less than 1,000 results. This tells me that in most cases, the competition is going to be fairly low enough to where I should be able to write content about this topic and get a search ranking for it. I can't necessarily tell how much content I might need. 500 words might be enough to do it. I might need to go to 1,000 or 2,000 words potentially. I might be able to get that ranking in 6 weeks, or it might take 6 months or a year to get it simply by publishing the content and just letting it sit there. So there are all of these unknowns that you simply can't know when you're going into this type of a project. But you can use the information that Google provides to you to figure out whether you have a chance or not. With keywords like these, I believe I would have a pretty good chance. With keywords that are a lot more specific than that, let's say I just wanted to get a search ranking on the term nuclear fallout. There are over 14,000 pages that have that particular phrase in the title. Now, sure, the How to Survive Nuclear Fallout page would kind of still be targeting that shorter keyword phrase, but it gives me something realistic than, that I might actually be able to achieve instead of just going only for these dreamer type of terms where there's tons of competition, but there's a lot of traffic too, I'd be willing to bet, that goes along with it. So if I search for nuclear fallout back here, I find that there's 1,000 to 10,000 monthly searches. How to survive nuclear fallout has considerably less. But when you compare that there are only 92 pages in all of Google that are targeting this exact keyword phrase, with this phrase in the title of the page at least, compared with the almost 15,000 that are targeting the other one, it's a lot easier to go after this lower hanging fruit, so to speak, than it is to try to get the really, really popular keyword phrases. So I could potentially try to gear my site one of two ways. I could make it about these personal radiation detectors to where the entire site is about that subject and focus it on that, or I could make it more on how to survive nuclear fallout to where these personal radiation detectors would really just be a part of that website. So if I were to go for just personal radiation detectors, I would need to find 20 different page topics that I could use on this site. So a main homepage for the website would be one. I could have a section on brands. I could have another section for some informational content. So that gets me up to 3 pages. I could have maybe 10 different brands that I decide to target. Each of those brands would get their own page, so that would be 10 more pages, putting me up to 13. And that would leave me 7 more pages to do, so those might be targeting some kind of informational topic. With the radiation detector being the entire subject of my website, I may or may not be able to come up with 7 good, distinct informational topics having to do with that type of product. One of those may be something like how to survive nuclear fallout. It could also be more specific topics having to do with the usage of radiation detectors, different things they're used for. Um, but ultimately, I don't know if I could come up with 7 good topics for it. So if I really wanted to go after this as my niche, I would probably need to go heavier on the brands. I'd probably need more than 10 brands, and that would lessen the number of these informational topics that I would actually need. However, if I went for this kind of a topic, as far in terms of it being the main niche of my website, how to survive nuclear fallout, then again, the radiation detectors just become a section of my website. I then might have a section on nuclear fallout books and also protective clothing. So within each of these categories, I would also have products and brands that I might be featuring. So here I might feature, depending on what I could find, 2, 3, 4 potentially different books. So here would probably be a really good one to start with, the U.S. Armed Forces Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Survival Manual. So this is actually official information on what to do in those cases. So that might be a good choice to go for. The nuclear is really the part that I am most interested in for this site. So I'm just going to make reference to that. So doing it this way, I no longer need a bunch of informational topics specifically on radiation detectors. I no longer need 10 or more brands of radiation detectors to target. I might just be able to target 4 or 5 brands of radiation detectors and a couple of different books and a couple of different brands of protective clothing. And maybe if I run into another type of product that ends up being necessary for that situation, maybe I would have a section or possibly a single page to promote some miscellaneous products that would be needed. Doing it this way, if I have, say, 3 books plus the main page about books, and then I have clothing plus maybe 3 pages about clothing, then I have a section on personal radiation detectors and maybe 5 different brand pages on those. We're talking 11, 14 pages plus the home page. I'm already up to 15 pages on that site. So now I would just need 5 informational topics, all of them having to do with this main topic now on surviving nuclear fallout, instead of just this a little more restrictive topic of the personal radiation detectors. So now anything having to do with this, I could potentially discuss. Um, Maybe I would have a equipment checklist. Maybe I would also have things in terms of how to keep you and your family safe, basic needs. food, water, shelter, maybe even something on strategies. What's the best thing to do? Should you stay put? Should you try to move? So, with this topic, I have a lot less of these informational topics that I really need to try to figure out. But I also have a little more flexibility in terms of what these topics can be about. They don't all have to be about radiation detectors now. They can be about this slightly more broad topic. And so, knowing that I think my main topic here, that I could potentially get a search ranking here, knowing that there are at least some brands of these radiation detectors, which will be the most expensive product, most likely, that I will be promoting on this site. I believe I could get some search traffic on at least some of these brand names. And I haven't even really gone into the keyword research for these other types of products and the other brand names and the informational topics that I would also be targeting here. But I would definitely still want to do this and figure out, is there search traffic for some of these topics? Maybe there is a lot of search traffic for one of these topics, but I might need to phrase it in just the right way, or I may never see that search traffic. So you're using the research, you're using what you feel like would be the best thing for people visiting your website, and also trying to figure out how you can sell the right kinds of products to these people as well, based on what their needs are going to be. So, a site like this, obviously, I would be attracting people that would potentially be interested in buying these books and protective clothing and radiation detectors and any other equipment that might possibly be necessary for this kind of a situation. So, I'm not only thinking about the search engine because I'm looking into these keywords, I'm also thinking about what is best for my website visitors and how to connect those search engine terms to products that I can actually sell. For example, on some of these informational pages, my equipment checklist, I could definitely link up to some of these other pages. I might recommend that you have some kind of a survival manual. So on that page, within the content of that page, I might link up to this particular page of my site. I would obviously also mention the protective clothing and radiation detectors and things of that nature. Those could also be linked up to these pages of my site. So while I wouldn't end up putting advertising on this type of a page, if I can get traffic in for this informational topic and direct them along to one of the pages on my site that is promoting a product, that's how I convert that traffic into sales while also doing what is best for the people that are visiting my site, giving them the information that they are looking for and helping to solve their problems that they may have relating to that kind of information. So with that said, there are a number of ways that you can kind of go about trying to accomplish the things that I've been talking to you about today. Your ultimate goal here is to do what I've kind of been walking you through with my niche, which is to figure out what your website is going to be about, and then to figure out what each of the different pages of that site will be about, because each page needs its own individual topic. You can utilize the Google Keyword Planner to help you out with the keyword research. You can utilize actual Google searching to figure out sometimes what people actually search for, what kind of competition there might be among these other websites. You can also use sites such as Google Trends. Now, I believe I may be in a too specific niche. Actually, uh, Geiger counter would probably be the best term that I could use for this. This is Google Trends. It will tell you how your product niche has been doing over the course of time. However, it doesn't really have a lot of data for search terms that do not have a ton of traffic. This is really easier to use when you get as vague as you possibly can while still sticking to what your niche and your website would actually be about. So, one of the main topics of my site, no matter how I go about building it, will be these Geiger counters. I also know that Geiger counter is one of the more heavily searched terms for this particular niche. While it's a term that will appear on my website, I'm not purposefully going to try to get a ranking on this term because I know it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do. However, within Google Trends, I can use this term to find out a little bit of information about my niche. Number one, I can find out over the course of a year whether there are seasonal tendencies in this niche. There are a lot of ups and downs that I can see for this search phrase. This is running from June of last year until May of this year. So we're pretty much covering the majority of an entire year here. This is the last 12 months worth of data. There is no obvious way up and way down section. So I believe this niche would not actually be seasonal. I think it's something that would be fairly consistent all year long. You have some minor ups and downs, but month to month, you stay fairly busy. Now, in terms of the areas, you can figure out where is this topic popular. It's actually the most popular, it looks like, in the southwest of the USA. The least popular up in these northern states. Maybe there's just not enough traffic in those states for them to really be showing up because there aren't very large populations up in those states either. I think that's the Dakotas, Wyoming, maybe Colorado. Not 100% on that one. No, because Colorado is one of the higher ones here. You can figure out, though, where people are that are actually interested in this kind of thing. So people that live in the Southwest, they might have different terminologies. They might have different purposes that they want to use these products for. If you can do a little bit of research on that and find things that can help you to attract the people in those given areas, that can add an extra boost of traffic to your site. Simply knowing whether or not it's popular within your country is important. I can change the searching to worldwide here and figure out, is it just in the USA that people are interested in this, or is it other places? Australia is actually showing the most popularity, with the US being second, and I even have Canada down in fifth. Those are three primary Amazon websites, though: Australia, USA, and Canada. So, again, in that regard, I believe this would be a pretty good niche to pursue. Jumping back to the USA information for just a moment, though. Can't seem to scroll down for some reason. I also have some information in terms of related topics and related search terms that people might be using on Google. Sometimes this information can help with the keyword research. Maybe there are some words or terms here that I hadn't really been considering before. Google will tell me information about that. Then I might take this information and go back to the keyword planner and back to the Google website to try to figure out how much traffic is available for some of these terms if I believe they would be a good term to try to target. Then I can also figure out how much competition there is for it. Knowing seasonal tendencies is, in my opinion, extremely important from knowing within your current year, also knowing over the course of time what's the most popular. It looks like, when was this? 2011. I'm trying to think of any kind of major world event that could have happened in 2011 that would have caused a giant spike like that. Overall, though, while it looks like there may have been a time, maybe this period back here was when these products were really first becoming available to the public at a fairly affordable price. It could have generated a higher interest. I can't really see data before 2004 though, so it's hard to know what was going on before that. Since then though, minus this giant spike for the most part, it's been a fairly steady niche. There's not a ton more or less interest in it now than there used to be. So, as far as long-term stability, I believe that this, again, could be a good potential niche to pursue. Now, when you compare this with something that is obviously going to be seasonal, you can see a major difference. If I search for swimming pools within the United States, you are definitely going to notice these seasonal tendencies. I can see it's really high over here and really high over here and really low in the middle. That's because the cold months are in the middle since we're right at the beginning of summer now. So right here is kind of the beginning of spring, the beginning of summer, or the tail end of spring and the beginning of summer, and then going through here into the rest of the summer. As the summer comes to a close, though, our interest in this kind of product begins to die off. Now, it will come back again the next year, but if you're targeting a product like this, it's important to know these things ahead of time for a couple of different reasons. One of them, obviously, is that during some of the year, you have the potential to get a lot of traffic for these different search terms. But during other parts of the year, you're going to get much, much less traffic. So you should definitely expect some swings in terms of your income from a site like this too. A site targeting swimming pools or anything that people would do more commonly in the summertime or in warm weather, any kind of water sports, outdoor stuff, gardening, all of that is likely going to be seasonal in a similar manner to these swimming pools. So you could have a lot of traffic and really good commissions during the warm months of the year, but during the colder months of the year, the interest is going to be really low. The search traffic is going to be really low, and that will also affect your earnings. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing to go for a seasonal niche, but if you're only running one Amazon site, it's a lot more noticeable. But if you build a number of these sites and you target a variety of these different seasonal niches, you can have it balance out to where Maybe you have one site having to do with swimming pools and another site having to do with snow skiing. You would have, at two completely opposite times of the year, a site that was really popular, while the other site was a lot less popular at the time. But over the course of the year, it would stay fairly balanced out in terms of your overall earnings. Now, another reason why it's important to know about these seasonal tendencies has to do with the keyword planner. Google used to um, give you really good information on this type of thing. If you advertise with them, at least the last time that I saw it, they still provided trending information from month to month within the keyword planner, so you don't have to go outside to the Google Trends. Um, but if you know that a search term is trending, is going to be seasonal, it's going to affect your monthly traffic here. Using this same swimming pools example again, I can see that the average monthly searches is between 100,000 and 1 million. Now, let's just say we know the exact number here. Let's just say it's a million. We have 1 million average monthly searches for the term swimming pool on Google. If I then go back over to Google Trends, I can see that during the cold parts of the year, there's a very minor amount of traffic, maybe as little as 10% of the amount of traffic during the peak times of the year. Now, this number, this average monthly searches here on Google, is exactly what it says. It's the average of each month over the past 12 months. So when we look at an entire year's worth of data, that million would be kind of a center line. So your peak months would be way above that million, and your down months would be a lot less than that million. And you can pretty much expect that same type of thing with any keyword phrase or niche that is going to be seasonal or have any kind of dramatic swinging tendency like that. If it's a trending niche, a brand new type of product, for example, that's just come out, the average monthly searches in the keyword planner might be showing up as really, really low if there's not a year's worth of good keyword data for that term yet. So this is something that's important to consider when you're dealing with a term that has these seasonal tendencies. The average monthly searches is not something you can expect to see every single month consistently throughout the entire year, compared with a niche like what I was just searching for, Geiger counters. I do believe that would be a lot more consistent. So for this phrase, wherever it happens to land within that range, I think month to month, there would be a fairly consistent number of people searching for that term. So I don't believe this is going to be seasonal, like at least some other niches are going to be. There's nothing wrong with going after a seasonal niche, but again, you need to be aware that you are actually going after something like that. So now, one of the final things that I want to talk to you guys about today has to do with hunting and picking a domain name. Ultimately, the domain name that you choose for one of these sites is not going to be insanely important. It won't really make or break your chances at success. With that said, though, I do believe there are a couple of things that you can do that gives you a bit of an edge over some of your competition. To simplify this as much as possible, to make it as easy to understand as I can, the two biggest factors with your domain name should be the length. You want it to be as short as you possibly can make it, and also keywords. You don't have to match a long keyword phrase that you might be trying to target. For example, my site on how to survive nuclear fallout. If that's going to be the primary keyword phrase for my entire website, I don't need how to survive nuclear fallout.com. I don't need survivenuclearfallout.com. But if I could have the word survive or nuclear or fallout or any variation of those three words within my domain name, then it will give me at least some kind of an edge over competition that does not have that in their domain at all. Now, the biggest thing you want to avoid with domain names is anything that might be a brand name, company names, uh, model names, model numbers, anything that might be some kind of a registered trademark of a company. All of that stuff you need to avoid with the brand names. So I would never want to, even if it was available, I would not want to register ratex.com and try to build a site targeting all of the different ratex products that I could find. This is simply a no-no with Amazon. It's a no-no legally. Won't help you out with Google either, for that matter. So you need something that is not going to step on anybody's toes, legally speaking. You want something that's as short as you can possibly find it, and you also want it to have some kind of keyword relation to what your entire website is about, or at least that's the most ideal thing that you can find. I also recommend to stick with .com domain names, even though they are harder to find. Since you're not looking for a specific keyword phrase with these types of websites, it's usually not incredibly difficult trying to find something. So, just as an example, obviously something long, this would kind of been the more traditional sort of keyword phrase that somebody might try to pursue. Oddly enough, it actually is available. It wouldn't necessarily be a bad one to try to go for. The only problem I can really see with this keyword phrase is that it's simply long. It has three words, it has 21 letters in it. So, whenever possible, I definitely try to make it a lot shorter than that if I can manage. Now, there's no specific limit. You don't have to try to find a 5 or a 6 letter domain name or anything like that. But, if you can get it somewhere in the middle of that range, 10 to 15 letters, um, it's a lot more manageable. It's easier for people to remember. And it kind of seems like Google gives a little bit more weight to the uh, shorter phrases. I think that's kind of to counteract the exact match domain benefit that they used to provide. You used to be able to register a domain name, and whatever that keyword phrase was, survive nuclear fallout for this one, I'd pretty much guaranteed have a search ranking for that search term by registering this domain and building a decent website behind it. Nowadays, it's not really guaranteed. They still have to consider that your domain name is your brand name and that people might search for it though. So they still have to provide some kind of a bonus to an exact match domain, such as that. I believe, in my personal opinion, the way that they have counteracted that and kind of lessened the effect is the longer your domain name is, the less likely that it's probably just your brand name. And so I think they would lessen the effect of that exact match domain bonus as your domain gets longer. Because think about it, any brand name website, the name's usually pretty short. Google.com, GoDaddy.com, Dell.com. You're usually not dealing with a 21 letter domain name in a lot of those cases. So I would want something maybe with the word survival in it, so either survive or survival, possibly with the word nuclear or fallout. I could maybe even go for the word radiation potentially as being part of my domain name. I know this won't be available because it's way too general, but something short and sweet, survival guide would obviously be a really great choice. Um, it can also be something that's not even um a real word. It could be your own name, could be part of the domain name. It could be abbreviations for other stuff. Um, for example, NF for nuclear fallout. Nuclear fallout survival.com. I have the keyword survival in it. I'm not using the words nuclear fallout, but I could still incorporate that as kind of being a name or a title of my entire website. And it makes sense because in my domain it's abbreviated. But I've also accomplished getting a much shorter domain name in the process here. Now, my NF Survival is only 10 letters instead of being 21 letters. Now, there are ways um, that you can go about on the GoDaddy website. There's a way that you can bulk search for these domains. I'm not going to demonstrate this one during the live class. I have that as part of the ebook guide for this class, though, to where you can take a long list of keyword phrases, or even just a long list of potential domains that you would be happy to accept for that site, and punch all those domains in at once, and it'll tell you which ones of those are available and which ones are not. Makes it a lot easier if you have a really big list that you're going to want to search through. In a lot of cases, I just kind of hunt for them one at a time, like I do here, because once I can find something that I feel like is a good fit, I'll typically stop my domain research there. So um, I'm not 100% positive that I will go after this specific domain name. I obviously still have some more keyword research that I need to be doing with my site. I need to find the different brand names, the different products that I want to target for these different types of products besides the radiation detectors. I'd still want to go through more radiation detectors and find out if there are better brands that I should be targeting in terms of brands that have more search traffic that I could easily get a hold of that would be low competition. Um, but anything else that I need to do in terms of the research for trying to get keyword phrases, for trying to figure out what all the different page topics will be about on my site, it's all repetitive beyond, what I have showed you so far here today. So I'm not going to spend another potential hour going through more of this research. But in the beginning of the next class, you'll be able to see how this all turned out and we will be putting together a complete plan for this entire website in the next class of this series. So with that said, in the meantime, between now and the next class, you want to take your Amazon research that you did in the previous class, do some keyword research on it, make sure that you believe you are targeting a good niche, one that has a variety of page topics that you will be able to go for, one that has a variety of decent keyword phrases that you can target on all those different pages. And by decent keywords, I'm talking about traffic that is at levels good enough. I shoot for the 100 to the 1000 range keyword phrases. And then also keywords that have low enough competition to where you don't believe you'll have to do a ton of work to be able to get a ranking on them. Complete this research with your own niche. Try to come up with a list of different possible page topics like I have done during today's class with my own niche. Once we get to the next class in this series, we will be taking this information, finalizing our research, figuring out the exact 20 pages that we want to be building for this website. So we will get everything completely planned out the next time. That way, when we get to the actual website building process, we know exactly what we're doing. We know what all the pages are going to be about. So you don't find yourself guessing as you go. When you finish building it, it gives you a site that simply makes a lot more sense to the people who are visiting it, because you're not haphazardly putting it together with a random page topic here and a random page topic there. You have topics that make sense together and you organize them on your site in a way that makes sense to the people that are visiting it. So again, we will be proceeding with all of this in the next class of this series. Let's see, this question, you have a number of easy affiliate type of sites set up. Can I tell you which ones are acceptable by Amazon and Google? If you're referring to software that will basically generate the entire site for you with all of your page content, all the different pages, really neither Amazon or Google will ever be happy with any of them, unfortunately. It's a great idea in theory and would be awesome if it could work, but ultimately any automated site, any automated content like that has to come from somewhere. And that somewhere is always going to be somewhere else out there on the internet. And so Google always knows when site content is being duplicated. They can't give a top 10 ranking to more than 10 websites. So when this software generates a page about a topic and then somebody else uses that and makes the same page, you end up in a situation where if you were seeing results with the software before, they just simply die off and disappear overnight a lot of times. Amazon really seems to have been cracking down in recent years. You used to be able to generate a bunch of these automated sites and put them up there, and I've never really been happy with using them, but a lot of people do. And Amazon doesn't like them, and Google is always looking to figure out a way to not put those pages in their search results, or at least not high. Yeah, unfortunately, all the all that JVZoo affiliate software, if it is building an entire website for you, if it is building all of the content for you on those pages, and if it offers you no way of really being able to change that content to where you would actually want to go in and wipe out the automated content and completely write your own, unique content to go along with it. That's really the only situation where that software will offer you long-term success. The problem is that it sounds really great. It's easy, you click a button and boom, you have a whole website and it can start making money for you. You can make money with a site like that, but you're going to have to always drive traffic to it yourself. You're not going to really be able to have it automated where you're getting free search traffic and converting it into sales. So in that regard, they can't really be successful long term like that. They are so popular because they sound really great in theory. You're quite welcome. Gregory, yes, pages can be re-indexed if you um, if you have a page on a website that you've built and maybe it gets indexed by Google and it's not ranking very well. You can certainly change that content or even add to that content and give it a little bit of time, and Google will revisit that page and re-index the content that is there and potentially change your search ranking as a result of it. Those types of changes, though, they can be confusing if you're trying to deal with that kind of stuff. Let's say you build a page and it's number 11 on Google. So you're at the top of the second page in the Google search rankings for a keyword phrase you want to be. Obviously, you're really close to breaking into the top 10. Number 11 isn't a bad spot to be, but obviously, you would want to be up on the top 10. So if you wanted to make some updates or changes to that page to try to boost its ranking, even when you change a page and Google indexes that change, you're not guaranteed to see the instant results of that change in the search rankings. It can take time. It's just the way that Google operates. They kind of make a number of different reiterations of their rankings. And if your site's going to go up, you'll kind of slowly move up. And if your site's going to go down, you'll usually slowly start to drop your way off the rankings. So in that regard, if you make changes, if you're wanting to get a page re-indexed, give it time to simply see what the effects of those changes would be. The are you talking about my types of websites? Is it Yvette? Okay. Um, for these types of said websites, it's actually pretty likely if you can target the niche and the products and the keywords properly. The biggest part, obviously, is you need to target the keywords correctly. You need keywords that offer you some traffic, but not enough traffic to where tons of people want to go for it. So that's how you get, in general, lower competition is by going for lower traffic amounts, but still, traffic that's worth your while to pursue. And so that's why I usually recommend the 100 to 1,000 range on the average monthly searches. You can definitely target phrases that have less traffic than that and pretty easily get rankings on a lot of them. You just won't end up with a lot of traffic overall. So if you can balance the keywords right and go after at least some 3 or 4 different pages, if they can be targeting decent traffic and low competition phrases, you have a really good chance of building one of these sites and being able to just let it sit there and earn by itself. The last time that I built an entire website in this Azon Masterclass series, the original time that I ran it was back in, I'm pretty sure 2013, if I'm not mistaken, using the same basic strategies that I'm still teaching now. The site that I built in the previous course is still around today, still successfully getting search traffic every month. Actually has exposure on over 1,000 different keyword phrases for just that one website, and still refers sales most months. Sometimes during some of the really warm months of the year it won't, because it's seasonal towards the winter months. But that website is downcomforterguide.com. You can actually go and see that site still up and running today. So the fact that the same strategy that I teach and was teaching even 5 years ago is still working today, and that site is still successful today. And I've only updated it a couple of times since I originally built it. It's a pretty effective hands-free strategy. It requires a lot of work in the very beginning, but then once you have the site built and it's running good, you can usually then just leave it alone and maybe update it once every year or two is typically what I'll end up doing. That's a good question. In general, I recommend to build 20 pages for each site if you can come up with that many decent topics for it. There are some exceptions to that though. If you're just getting started, and let's say you're really uncomfortable with the whole selecting the right niche and the right products and the right keywords, it can sometimes be better to build smaller websites, maybe 5 or 10 page websites, and try to build a couple of them and just get them out there, give them a couple of months to see how they're doing in terms of search engine rankings, and use it as a bit of a learning experience. You can see what performs well and what isn't performing as well. And then a lot of times you can take, one of those smaller sites, maybe if you build 3 of them, you take the best performing one and then you extend those sites into a lot more pages. At least that way you don't end up, if you build a site that isn't going to work, you want to waste as little bit of time and work on it as possible. So, when you're a little less comfortable or still kind of learning these strategies, going on the smaller side, looking for what's working, and then build that site out to be larger, start targeting more products and more keywords with it. Sometimes that can be a more efficient way to go. But for the average person, I just do 20-page websites is my recommended size. And even from there, you can still expand those sites if they do really well. Clayton, that that is one way of going about it. He's saying he just started doing another one of my courses, Hobby Azon, and he's asking, should he focus on this class and just use his hobby as a niche? Um, Hobbies do make really great niches for Amazon sites because that's what the average person is willing to spend money online frivolously. And they might not be able to find the things that they want or need for their hobby in a local store, is another prime reason for that. The main difference between what I teach in this course and what I taught in the Hobby Azon course, though, is Hobby Azon is more about just focusing on one website. If if you only want to build one Amazon site and you have a hobby that you're really into and you think you could share information or new things about that hobby on an ongoing basis, essentially forever, and you think people would really want to follow that type of information, those are great sites for the Hobby Azon series because they involve building um, your own following, a social media following, an email list, something of that nature. A site like what I'm teaching in Azon Masterclass is not the kind of site you have ongoing interaction with. You build the site and you just leave it there to do its own thing. So you're not building an audience or anything like that with the site for the Azon Masterclass. So with that said, you can use a hobby as your niche for this type of a website. Whether you would want to build a hobby site like I teach in this series or like I teach in Hobby Azon is really kind of up to you on whether you want a site that you build and then you just leave it there, or do you want something that you continually work on and try to grow over time? And maybe even what your hobby is about. Do you think it's something that uh, would have the information you could put out there and that people would actually want to get continual information about your hobby? Chances are with um, something like what I'm targeting here, um, a survival website, nuclear fallout, radiation detector type of a website, there's probably not going to be a big fan base that would follow a site like that. There probably wouldn't be um, constant information that could be put out on a website such as that. So my niche, even though it is definitely a hobby for some people, I'm sure, probably would not be a good choice for continual um, website building and building an audience and things like that. So that's why, this what I teach in Azon Masterclass is a much better fit for it. So it'll really just depend on what your hobby is about, whether you'd be better off building this more static type of a website or what I teach in Hobby Azon. Most likely, though, if you've never built a site before, Azon Masterclass is a much better place to start than Hobby Azon. Hobby Azon is a lot more in-depth and ongoing kind of work. Let's see, how long will it take to know if a site is a bust? Honestly, that one's really hard to answer. Even even if you build a site and 6 months or even a year down the road, that site could be doing absolutely nothing. I mean, not getting a single search engine visitor, and obviously then not making anything. And all of a sudden, your site may just start ranking on Google one day. Sometimes Google if all you put out there is a content website, there's no marketing, there's no link building for the website whatsoever. If the competition is a little high, you might not break into the rankings very quickly. And as time goes on, maybe some of the other sites disappear. Your site obviously becomes to get a little bit older, and once your domain name becomes more than a year old, Google definitely starts looking at your site and your content a lot more seriously than they will the brand new websites. So I personally, if let's say I built a site and it was doing absolutely nothing, when would I stop wasting the $10 or whatever a year to pay for that domain name and just close it down and give it up? I would probably let it sit there for at least 3 years. But honestly, even then, once you have a site that's 3 years old, even if it's not performing good, I'd consider not shutting it down, but whether I needed to change my content or change the keywords that I'm targeting. Because a 3-year-old website will be able to get the rankings a lot easier than a brand new site. So in that regard, um, you could argue to never close any site down. If it's not working out after a couple of years, maybe consider changing the direction or the keywords that you're going after. But sometimes sites can just sit around and do nothing for a while, and one day they're just all of a sudden really respected by Google. It's kind of strange the way Google can do things sometimes, but not that that happens in all cases, but I have seen that a lot. um, I've had people that have taken my course before and have built a website and have shown it to me and wondered why it wasn't working right, and I felt like they did everything right and advised them to just wait. And um, once their site topped, I believe it was just past a year old, it immediately shot up to the top of the rankings, and they started doing really great with it. And that was 4 or 5 years ago, and they still have the site today and still get regular traffic and earnings off of it. So I don't really ever discount a site as being dead if you believe you've done the right things to to build it. If you've written unique content and have been careful about the niche and the keywords and things that you're targeting. That is a possibility. Um, Clayton has basically a really old domain name, like 10 years old or so, that already has some kind of um, a Google ranking, even if it's not on page one. He's saying, should I just use it to build one of these websites? It it would maybe depend on what's already there, what kind of content you have on it, what kind of keyword it's already ranking for. If if you could build a site that relates to whatever topic it's already about, whatever that keyword is that it has the page two ranking for. If that keyword relates to something that could be an Amazon product niche. Okay, it related to your hobby. Awesome. Yeah, that could be a good possibility. Um, Google would certainly look at your 10-year-old domain name compared with a brand new domain name. You build the exact same website on a brand new domain and a 10-year-old domain, you will definitely get much higher rankings with that 10-year-old domain name. So I do think if that's related to your hobby and you were thinking about doing that for Amazon, I do think that could be a good way to go. If some of your pages and content on that site are already ranking, maybe even consider leaving them there, or copying that content and moving it over to your new site, making sure that those old pages and rankings still stay active. Because if you build up more of a website, that page two ranking could easily end up going up once you have even more pages relating to that same topic or that same hobby. You're quite welcome, Clayton. Glad to help. I will go ahead and make a last call for questions now. And do this real quick before we close out tonight. He's asking about domain age. Is it just for sites that have content on it and not just a domain that you bought but not put content on yet? It's actually in reference to your registration date on the domain name. So if you register domain names and never even use them, never even set up a website on them, but you continually pay for that registration, um, those are better to use than just a brand new domain. Google will look at those and say, even though your website maybe is only a week old, if it sees you registered that domain name a few years ago, it certainly takes that into consideration. So if you have old age domains like that are just lying around that you haven't used, this is a great way to try to utilize those. Can really help to speed up the whole process of getting ranked in the search engines.